Are you recording now?
Maybe.
It would be funny if we left all this in, though.
Keep it in.
Okay, so where are we? What episode is 3? I've already lost track. 3 episodes in. So welcome to episode 3 of the Cleveland podcast. And I'm Mitchell, and I'm not sure who you are. Who are you?
I'm Jeff Goad.
I got hung up for a second there because every time I go to type Cleveland now, I spell it incorrectly.
I've been doing the same thing because I'm looking for jobs and stuff, and I keep typing in Cleveland, but I keep typing in Cleav.
Yeah, like the autocorrect on my phone absolutely hates me now because it's like, no, you spell Cleveland with an A because you've been typing it like that 500 times a day for the past month. So here we are.
Yeah, what's fun here is, so Mitchell and I had decided that when it's one person's turn to tell the story, the other person's going to be like the main host and like introduce us and be in charge of segues. So that's what Mitchell's doing right now. You're like being the main host right now.
Yeah, I'm doing an excellent job.
I'm very impressed. Very proud of you.
I'm backseat hosting. It's fine.
So what do we do now?
I don't know. I guess we can just cut this one short.
just
How long is it? It's been a couple of minutes, hasn't it?
It's been...
it's almost 2.
I almost said an hour and 50 minutes, but I'm sorry. It's been a minute and 50 seconds.
That's fine. Well, we can just cut it.
Okay.
We'll come back next week.
I have a story to tell you. I did a lot of research and stuff.
Tell it next week.
Mitchell, I'm gonna be in Indianapolis next week.
I know you're totally crapping out, and we have to record like double time this week, and I have to edit double time this week. So we almost just, on a side note, almost got tornadoed.
We did. Mitchell smokes, and we were outside smoking before this, and we heard this crazy alarm that we decided was a tornado alarm, even though we don't know what a tornado alarm sounds like. It was just like a long, steady, loud tone that was just going, but eventually it just kind of went, like it ran out of batteries or something.
Yeah, I don't know what a tornado alarm sounds like either, but there's no other reason that would be going off. Like, they don't just turn the siren on because there's a storm coming. But also at the same time, they probably turned it off because it doesn't look like there's anything going on. Yeah,
I was going to say that you said there's no reason why it wouldn't be a tornado alarm, and I'm like, maybe the reason it's not a tornado alarm is because there wasn't a tornado.
But what else was it?
I don't know what it was, but I'm not going to immediately assume that it was a tornado alarm.
And also, like, the direction it was coming from, it's like coming from like the middle of Lakewood. So is it
like... Or it was coming from that apartment building right over there.
Why would an apartment building have an alarm?
I don't know. Why would any of these things have that weird fucking alarm? It's a mystery. I don't know what it is.
Oh man, we can just do an episode to tornadoes probably.
Of all of the Cleveland tornadoes?
Yeah.
Have there been a bunch?
I don't know. There was one maybe within the past few years, I feel like, but not like.
Did people die?
I don't think so, but not like when you see. Not like in Twister or when you see on the news when there's like a tornado and it's wreaking havoc all over the state and it's like crazy. I think it was technically a tornado and it like technically touched down somewhere within the county. As far as I know, I never saw any video or pictures or anything. So as far as I know, it wasn't like the stereotypical like you see the funnel of the tornado. It might not have even been visible at all.
Okay.
But, technically a tornado. I don't know. That's my recommendation for this week is not Twister.
Your recommendation is not to see Twister at all, period, or you're just not recommending it this week?
I would just not. I mean, just in general, I'm not going to...
Are you not recommending it, or are you recommending that people not see it?
I'm not going to recommend it, but okay. I wouldn't say don't see it.
Okay. I haven't seen it.
It's not really exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a movie about a tornado.
Yeah, I remember
it's a movie about multiple tornadoes.
I had no interest.
Technically.
I saw Sharknado.
Oh, Sharknado's good.
I didn't see any of the sequels. The sequels look like they're trying to.
I saw at least 3. Well, yeah, but how else is What's-Her-Face going to get a paycheck?
Oh, what is her face?
You know who I'm talking about.
I do know who you're talking about, and I can't think of what her face is.
I'm sure if we were doing this live, people would have told us by now because they're probably screaming it.
Gargamel!
Gargamel is in Sharknado, I think. I can't think of her. Tara Reid?
Yeah. Tara Reid, thank you. Yes. And
that was not an edit. I thought of it that fast.
No, you did. That was very smart. Very impressed. Okay, but why is Tara Reid famous again? Was she in American Pie? I didn't see the American Pie movies.
I don't know.
What was she in?
I don't know what she was in, but it's gone downhill.
Because I know that she wasn't like a Paris Hilton who like was literally doing nothing except being rich. Like she actually was an actress.
You're right.
But I don't know what she was acting in because I don't remember seeing her in anything really.
She was in things. I also feel like we're like in the alternate universe when we have these conversations, because if we were just having this normal casual conversation, I would just Google it and we'd figure it out. But it's a lot more interesting to not do that right now.
I agree. It's a lot more fun to know that like people are listening to this and they're
squirming,
like,
oh, yeah,
because they have the answers and they're very frustrated about how little we know.
That's what actually I was talking to. It wasn't anything specific, but I was talking to, or Samantha was talking to me about listening to the podcast, and she was like, it's so hard not realizing that I'm just listening to you and it's not a conversation, and I'm like screaming whatever you're talking about.
Are you talking about superstar drag queen Samantha Echo?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm name dropping.
Legend, icon, star.
Samantha Echo.
Yeah. I think we should do a whole episode where we can't think of like the simplest things the entire time.
Like Samantha Echo's name?
Yeah.
Who's that drag queen?
Oh my god!
That one drag queen. She's always at cocktails. What's her name? She did that Desperate Living drag number once.
Yeah, I feel like she's important.
Was it Samantha?
Cindy?
Sardinica? Something like that.
Oh, we're gonna get murdered over that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll do our fun little fact, which I think we're going to, probably after maybe a few episodes, change to just like, hey, Jeff, tell me a story.
Yeah, I like that. Because like a fun little fact is cute, but like, I mean, you like to tell stories. I like to tell stories. Yeah. So, yeah.
And after a while, it gets to that point where I have that existential crisis of it basically becomes, tell me something you really like about yourself. And I'm like, ugh. I mean, after a while.
Sure. So, Mitchell, tell me a story.
A story? I wasn't prepared for a story.
So we're still going to do a fact this time.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've got a story. But okay, Mitchell, tell me something you really like about yourself.
Ew. No, we're not going there. One thing that I like to do, it's taken a backseat recently, but for a few years it was pretty heavy. I collect original NES games. I really wanted to, or I still do. I still want to get the entire collection. I think it's like 600 in the mid 600s.
Oh my god!
But I have between 150 and 200. I can't remember how many. And every time we go to either the classic gaming convention that was just recently,
we missed that though.
Yeah, it's fine. But every time we go to one of those, or even anywhere where I see decently cheap ones, I usually buy them because most of them are garbage level where they cost like $3 or $4. And then there are also like maybe 100 that are in the upper range.
And are you mostly missing just garbage ones or like really fancy ones or kind of a mix?
Mostly the garbage ones. I have a few that are, I mean, not expensive, but I have a few that are like more than $20 or $30, several.
What's like a really expensive one that you don't have?
Well, it becomes problematic because...
And I don't mean like Japanese releases.
No. I'm talking just strictly American.
Just American NES.
Yeah, strictly American.
Good old American NES.
Yes. The worst one for collectors is called Stadium Events. And the problem with Stadium Events, I don't know if you might even remember...
Nope.
Well, no, not Stadium Events, but you might remember there was a game called Track and Field.
Yes, I had that.
So, literally...
It was terrible. It was so boring.
Well, literally, Stadium Events was Track and Field, but when the company that released Stadium Events released the game, they published it, printed it, sold it for a very short amount of time. I don't know how long, but like very, very short. Less than a month, I feel like. Once it came out, Nintendo was like, hey, we want that. And they basically purchased it and pulled them from the shelves and rebranded it as Track and Field.
So it's literally the same game.
It's literally Track and Field, but in the game... It says Stadium Events, and the label says Stadium Events, but there were an extremely small number of games that people actually were able to purchase because it was such a short amount of time. So those go, I think in the world there are less than 7 with the box. 7. And I think without, we're still talking under 50 probably, and they go for maybe 4,000 or 5,000 each.
Wow.
So we have that. That's the extreme. There's a couple other random ones like.
So you don't want them all to play them all. You want them all because you want the collection.
Yeah, and that's one that I'm willing to just give up because it's not feasible. Another example is there are 2 Flintstones games, and one of the Flintstones games was a Blockbuster exclusive, so you could only play it because only Blockbuster got copies of the games. So the only people that ended up with it are people who like stole it from Blockbuster or ended up with it, or maybe bought it.
You could only rent it.
Yes, you could only rent it.
Oh, weird.
So either like they stole it from Blockbuster or like maybe purchased it from Blockbuster when they like were getting rid of them.
Yeah.
Or for whatever reason. That one's like in the 2000 range probably.
Wow.
And then there's like a various collection of games that are in the hundreds of dollar range just because of small print and like they're shitty games. Mm-hmm. Like nobody wanted them back in the day. But now that translates to, they're rare because nobody bought them. But yeah, that's what I like to do in my free time is buy those and then clean them and then play them for like 30 seconds and then put them on the shelf.
That's really nice. I've got a collection like that I'll tell you about sometime. But I actually had a plan for a story I was going to tell. But since we've started recording this, I've changed my mind about what story I'm going to tell. I'm going to tell a different one.
Ooh.
Because we were telling the story, because we were talking about the tornado outside, and it made me think about the time that I lived through a natural disaster. So I lived through an earthquake when I was living in Seattle. And it was like a fairly major earthquake. I think it was like a 6-point or 7-point something.
Okay.
And I remember at the time, I think I was 19 or 20, and me and my boyfriend Rodney were asleep. And it was like 11 a.m. or something. But we had been out drinking the night before, and we were still asleep at 11 a.m. And suddenly, like, the bed starts shaking, and I open up my eyes, and, like, the entire apartment is shaking. The fucking world is shaking around me. And I jump up, and I grab Rodney, and I pull the two of us underneath a door frame. And it is kind of impressive that, because especially at that point in my life, I was useless until I had like 2 1-liter bottles of Mountain Dew and like at least 3 cigarettes. That's just kind of where I was at in my life. I don't recommend starting your day like that now, but that's how I started my day back then. But somehow, instantly, I knew earthquake and I knew stand under doorway. So I grab Rodney, and we're both standing there like in our underwear underneath the door frame, and he is like confused and disoriented and is like trying to run away. So I'm like grabbing onto him and like holding him so that he won't run away. And then when the earthquake is over and he's finally like verbal enough to be able to say things to me, he was like, "Jeff, why were you trying to stop me? I was trying to get the goldfish bowl." Like, we had a goldfish bowl on top of a bookshelf, and he just didn't want our goldfish to die. But I thought he was just, like, completely panicking and, like, confused and was just going to, like, start running around the apartment.
You're like, no, the goldfish can die.
So the goldfish lived, Rodney and I lived, and everybody in the entire city of Seattle lived. Nobody died in that earthquake. And I remember thinking, like, oh, man, this is, like, a major deal. So boring, not even one death. I mean, I'm grateful.
Oh my God.
I'm very grateful that nobody died. But it does make my story a little less interesting, narcissistically. But there was some property damage, so that's exciting. My building it was a brick building. It was in Capitol Hill on 19th Street above this restaurant called the Kingfish Cafe. And the whole back alley of our building, the brick facade had completely fallen off.
Oh.
And the entire alleyway was just filled with brick from the facade of our building.
Huh.
That's my story.
I did experience that one. Remember that one earthquake? I don't even know when to tell you when it was. Within the past 7 or 8 years.
Hi. Do you want to be a part of this story?
Within the past 7 or 8 years, there was like this one really stereotypical earthquake that hit basically like West Virginia and Ohio-ish. And I was at my parents' and they had like a reclining couch and sofa type deal. And I was reclined in it and just like laying there looking at my phone. And I don't know if this is it for sure, but I want to believe it was. Because I felt like the recliner shake a little bit. I thought their cat had jumped up on the back of it.
Okay.
So I just like turned around and looked, and my mom was at the computer behind me, and like I turned around and she like saw me looking, and she was like, "What?" I said, "Oh, I don't know, the couch shook or something." And I thought the cat jumped up, and like I didn't think anything of it. And like a couple hours later, I saw like on maybe Reddit or online somewhere that there was like technically an earthquake. So I thought, yeah, that has to be what that was.
That's always so weird to me because I also remember there was a time where there was technically an earthquake. I forget even where I was, but like people I knew were like, yeah, I was like driving in my car and I felt it, or like, yeah, I was like sitting there watching TV and I felt it. I'm just like, I'm alive too, and I was awake during this. How did I like not experience?
I mean, most
people
people
all experienced.
Yeah, most people didn't in that circumstance. I don't even know if I did, if it was just coincidental, but I'm gonna believe that I did.
Okay, I believe that you did. I vote earthquake over ghost cat.
I don't vote that, but I believe that.
In this circumstance, I vote that. Normally, I would not vote that. Normally, ghost cat gets my vote.
Okay. All right. Are you ready to tell me another story?
I am ready to tell you a story.
A longer amount of time.
Although, before I tell you the story, I wanted to share something with our audience. I got a message on Facebook from a friend of mine. And I'm not gonna. I haven't cleared with my friend whether or not he wants it on here or not, so I'm not going to say who this friend is. But a friend of mine sent me this message. He said, "Hey there, so I wanted to send my feedback on Cleveland privately. Everything up until you started discussing Ariel Castro, I really enjoyed it. The discussion of the Quid and Cleveland in general, great. Seriously, that was a show I would listen to. When it came to the Ariel Castro case itself, though, the fact that neither of you seemed to know more than a cursory Google search, and that, even then, some things were wrong or overlooked, that really bugged me. Such a horrific case, such horrible abuse, and the whole treatment of it felt slapdash and disrespectful. I'll admit, I gave up 50 minutes into the episode. I'll give the next episode a shot and see how things develop, and like I said, the part before the story, I'd listen to that forever. It was light and fun, and the two of you have great on-air chemistry. It's just that the information reported seemed less like a Google search and more like just a cursory skim of a wiki page. Anyhow, that's one man's feedback, and I certainly may be in the minority. So I'm really grateful for any kind of feedback we can get. And what I would say is like the complaints that this person has are totally valid, and this show's not going to be for everybody. And there are certainly podcasts out there where everything is really carefully researched and they've really done their homework there. That's not what this podcast is. This isn't like a highly polished, super professional thing or product that we're packaging and delivering to you guys. This is just kind of like me and Mitchell having like a casual porch conversation about this shit. We research a little bit, we figure some stuff out. There's a lot we don't know. There's a lot that we're going to get wrong. And I'm okay with that. And if you're listening to this show and you're not okay with that, then I don't want to be the kind of person to be like, just go somewhere else if you don't like it. But, this is never going to be that podcast. So if you're looking for that podcast, I'd recommend like Sword and Scale. Sword and Scale is a great true crime podcast that's super well researched. But like Mitchell and I are just kind of, we just want to have like a fun little podcast where we just tell each other fucked up stories and we respond to it and go with it.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, I think part of the appeal is us discussing, just like we discussed Tara Reid. Is that her name?
Yes.
Tara Reid. And just kind of having a conversation and not going into this whole, I need to be right about everything. I don't know. I have the need to be right about everything and to know what all of the answers are to everything. So I do understand that mindset. And not knowing a lot of the things for the first couple episodes did kill me a little bit inside, but I'm also fine with it at the same time. So.
Yeah, you're never going to know everything.
No.
And I understand that like Tara Reid and Ariel Castro are very different topics. Tara Reid is just a stupid fucking celebrity who had a drug problem and is now in Sharknado. And like the Ariel Castro stories are like really horrific and terrible. But the reason why they're not different also is they're also just the kind of shit that when you're sitting on your porch in Lakewood drinking a PBR, you talk to your friends about.
Right.
And when you're just sitting around chatting with your friends about stuff, you don't have all of the information ready. You share with them what you have, and that's what we're trying to emulate on this. It's like liquid porch talk.
That's what we should name the podcast.
Liquid porch talk with two grandmothers. Oh,
wow.
It sounds so quaint.
You're like, I heard.
Porch talk in the quid.
We could just turn this into the rumor blog, basically. We just turn it into, like we said, just turn it into police blotter after too long. We'll just talk about things that happened today.
Or we can just make shit up. Be like, did you hear about the head swapper of Kingsbridge Heights?
Yes, I
did. Really? Tell me all about it.
So my cousin's friend has
his head swapped?
No, my cousin's friend has a friend, and I think his cousin's cousin knows a guy
who had his head swapped.
That has a friend who had his head swapped.
Fuck! Okay, anyways, the story that we're going to be talking about today is really, it's a really fucked up and very tragic story here. It's about 14 women who were raped and strangled, and 11 of those 14 were murdered. And this was all on the east side of Cleveland in a neighborhood called Mount Pleasant. And all of these rapes and murders took place between the years of 2007 and 2009. And one thing you might ask yourself is like, how could one person get away with that many attacks in one neighborhood in just a 2-year period? Like, he must have been like a fucking genius, right?
Right. That's because I feel like when we talk about serial killers just in general, if they have 27 victims, it's over like 10 years.
Yeah.
So we're talking 14 in 2 years is obviously way more concentrated.
In one neighborhood.
Right. And also in one neighborhood, because like I feel like Richard Ramirez went all over the place.
Totally.
And I don't think he even had 14. And I don't think it was 2 years. I have no clue.
Well, and also listening to true crime podcasts, one of the things that I've learned is if you want to get away with murder, first off, you don't murder people you know.
Well, yeah.
You murder people you don't know.
Silence of the Lambs taught me that.
Yeah. You murder people you don't know, but also you don't murder people anywhere near where you live.
Right.
Like, if I wanted to kill somebody, I would like hop on a Greyhound bus, go to Toronto, do some strangling there. Then I would hop on a flight a few weeks later and go to Chicago and shoot a few people. You know, like that's how you're going to get. I'm not saying you should do this, obviously, but you know, if you're going to get away with murder, you don't kill people you know, and if you can, like, get a big distance between you and those murders.
Yeah, that'll be the description this week. Jeff explains how to get away with the murder. That's what this entire episode is actually about. We're going to teach you how to murder people and get away with it.
Well, this episode is also along those lines too, though, because what's really fucking tragic about this episode is there's also another way to get away with murder. And another way to get away with murder is by murdering poor, black, crack-addicted women. Because all of these women were poor, they were black, and they were all addicted to crack cocaine.
And so this is recently, right?
Yes.
It's 2007, 2009.
Yeah, so all about a decade ago, while Mitchel and Amanda and Gina were trapped by Ariel Castro.
Right. Now, there's no overlap that ever got mixed up, right? I think we talked about that.
Oh, I'm not aware of any.
But I feel like even, obviously it's still a problem now, but that's one of the things historically that I've seen in stories about other serial killers is that a lot of time it takes a while to get noticed because, like, a sex worker disappeared, and then another one did, and then another one did, and the authorities or just people in general don't seem to care until it becomes 7 or 8 people, as opposed to if, you know, the white head cheerleader of the local suburb school went missing, and then the entire county will go out searching for her.
Oh, totally. And, you know, I mentioned earlier that I recommend the podcast Sword and Scale if you're looking for a really polished podcast. I will say there are 2 things that bother me about Sword and Scale. And he's gotten better about it as the years have gone on. But one is I really don't like the way he talks about mental illness. Like in one of the early episodes, there's some killer who is schizophrenic, and he ended up like murdering his whole family. And like basically the end of the episode was, for all you know, you might be living next door to somebody with schizophrenia right now, as though this is like some horrific thing. It's like, people have mental illness. I understand that schizophrenics do terrible things, but there's also a lot of fucking people with schizophrenia who aren't murdering people. But that aside, he also does this thing that drives me nuts, where when he tries to get us to really feel bad for a victim, he will say something like, and this poor, beautiful blonde girl was murdered. And I hear the words beautiful and blonde combined together a lot.
Right.
And
I feel like that's insinuating.
Totally. And I hear blonde used as a way to make us like, oh no, not a blonde girl.
Right.
You know, and I feel like I almost never hear she was a beautiful young black woman.
Well, right. And if you say, I honestly, if you say it was a blonde girl, it's a step away from saying it was a white girl.
Absolutely. That is what you're saying. You're communicating to the audience. It was a white girl who died, and you should care more about her because she's white.
Yeah, well, fuck that.
Now, I want to say for one thing, I'm a white dude and you're a white dude. And you and I are not experts on race issues at all. And kind of going back to what my friend was saying on his Facebook message, I just also want to make it clear that I'm not speaking about race as though I'm an expert on this. I'm not. But that said, I have some statistics here, Mitchell, and I'm curious. I'm going to quiz you on something.
Oh, God.
What percentage of Cleveland do you think is white, and what percentage of Cleveland do you think is black?
Is this Cleveland proper?
Cleveland proper.
Like the city limits of Cleveland?
The city limits of Cleveland.
I'm buying more time while I can think.
What percentage is white, and what percentage is black?
This is a trap either way, because I feel like if I'm way too high with the white end of it.
Don't overthink it. Just from your experience of living in Cleveland,
I mean, from
what percentage does it feel like to you?
Well, not even from my experience, but what I know.
Okay, what you know.
I would say, I know it's going to be too high, but I feel like maybe 60% will be white.
Okay.
And wait, is this just white and black? This doesn't account for...
I'm just asking you about white and black.
Because I don't know about like any other.
I'm not asking about anybody else.
Right.
What percent do you think is white, and what percent do you think is black?
But that takes a factor into the total.
Sure, of course.
What I just said 60, so I'll say 30 black.
Okay, 60% white, 30% black. Cleveland,
I know it's way lower than that.
Cleveland is 53% black and 37% white.
Okay, that's what I figured.
So it's the total opposite of what you thought.
Right.
And I don't say that to make you feel stupid, because I was also surprised by that statistic. Now, the next one is, same question, but Lakewood.
Oh, Lakewood actually might be closer with my same numbers. I would probably say Lakewood is... No, I'd say the same thing. Lakewood, now that I know that, I would say Lakewood is 60 and 30 black.
Lakewood is 88% white and 6% black.
Oh, see, I have no...
So, and I hope you don't feel like I'm making you feel stupid on here, because I honestly
It's not about me.
Exactly, and I didn't realize those things either. And it shows like the kind of fucking white privilege that you and I are walking around with. Because Cleveland is a predominantly black city.
Right.
But that's not my experience of it. And also, Cleveland is the 7th most dangerous city in America right now. And here you and I are living in this town that's 88% white. And and Lakewood is a safe city.
Right.
It feels very safe over here.
Right.
The experience of black people living in Cleveland in poor neighborhoods on the east side is not something you and I see, and it's not something you and I experience.
Right.
You know, although we are gay men, and gay men are definitely a minority that's disparaged in this country, we're still white men. And because of that, I feel strongly that gay white men have a much easier time in this society than poor black people do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, I feel like it doesn't matter. If you're a white man, it doesn't matter what else is going on.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's like, for example, when I showed you where the address where all this stuff happened was on Google Maps, you were like, oh, I don't even know. I've never been anywhere near that part of Cleveland before.
Right.
And out of curiosity, I was also looking at houses that you could buy in that general area, like right around Imperial Avenue where these murders happened. And if you want to buy a house in Lakewood, I just moved here from New York City, and the fact that you can buy a house in Lakewood for like $150,000 is shocking to me. And like you can buy like a nice 3-bedroom house for $150,000 in Lakewood.
4-bedroom.
4-bedroom. And if you want to move to the area where Anthony Sowell lived, who murdered all of these women, how much do you think a house is over there?
Oh God, I would like just average.
Yeah. I
mean, probably 50.
$25,000.
Oh Jesus.
I went to Zillow and I put his address as the central address, and I just looked kind of in that like several block area, and 22 houses showed up that were currently on sale, and the median price of those 22 was $25,000. So it's a very different life over there that you and I just don't see or experience.
Right.
And one thing that's fascinating about it is, it turns out you and I have a friend who, as a kid, used to hang out on the street where all of this happened when it was happening.
What? Is this one of the things that you had to tell me?
Yeah, it's one of the two things.
And I'm so
our
excited.
friend asked us not to say his name.
Okay, that's fine.
But I will tell you privately.
That's fine.
And yeah, so later on in the story, when it's appropriate, I will tell you some of the things that our friend remembers from this. But
so he was there at the time?
He was a child at the time that
Okay.
Anthony Sowell was living there. He remembers seeing him, and he remembers smelling how bad the neighborhood smelled.
Like in 2007, between those 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He was a kid playing on that street in that neighborhood at that time.
Okay.
So, anyways, a big part of this story is that also comes up a lot is the police department. So, this idea of like, if you want to get away with murder a poor black crack addicted woman. The big reason for that is a lot of the victims. There were some survivors, and they went to the police, and we'll go over, because I'm going to go through victim by victim and talk about each one. But kind of the overall sense was that they went there and they felt like the police just didn't care. And in 2014, the Department of Justice released a report stating that the Cleveland Police Department was using excessive force, had insufficient accountability and inadequate training. And you would think that a report like that would initiate some kind of major change. It'd be a big catalyst for improvement.
Well, how are you using excessive force if you didn't care?
Well, okay.
So in general, you're using excessive force, but not when it mattered.
Yeah, they're being overly violent with the people in the neighborhoods, with the people who they're arresting or whatever. And what's interesting is that an almost identical report had been put out 10 years previously. So even though these reports are coming out,
so it's like same shit, different day, basically.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. Things aren't changing for these people.
Yeah.
And
that also leads into possibly a future topic of Tamir Rice, like we talked about.
Absolutely.
Because I don't remember what year that was, but it's going to be after 2007, 2009, but it's within that same time period.
Sure. And I forget which documentary somebody said this on, but I watched 2 documentaries about the Cleveland Strangler. I watched one called Red Right Hand, The Cleveland Strangler, which is a 50-minute documentary that was put up by Vice, and it's available on YouTube. It's fantastic, and it very much focuses on the police angle of it. And there's another great one that you can watch on Amazon Prime if you have Amazon Prime, called Unseen, and it's about the women themselves. And both are great documentaries. But in one of the documentaries, I forget which, I wrote this quote down, I just wish I remembered who said it, said that when the cops only see us as criminals, we lose our right to be victims.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like I said, the whole white girl situation, like you only matter when you're white, or unless there are like 10 of you. Yeah. And then the 10 of you share the same right as one white person, which is fucked up.
And clearly it's a very complicated issue here, because I also don't want people who are listening to this to think that I think all cops are bad people. They're absolutely not.
Right.
What I think, this is just my opinion. My opinion is that being a police officer is a really traumatic job, especially if you're doing it in high crime areas where you're witnessing some of the darkest, most depraved parts of humanity constantly. And I think when that happens, you develop a lot of PTSD. And one of the ways that your brain makes it so that you can continue to function as a human being is you get desensitized to it. And especially when you're dealing with, for example, a crack addict who runs up to you and says, I was just raped, it's easy to be like, oh, you're crazy, leave me alone. Because you just see a crack addict. You don't see somebody who's suffering and who something terrible just happened to. And what also really breaks my heart about this story in general, when we get into it more, is that I feel like a lot of people write off junkies. They're like, well, they were ruining their lives anyways. Why should I care about a junkie? Why should I care about a sex worker? We somehow have more empathy for somebody who we deem as an innocent. But what really hurts me is there are these women who survived, who I got to see these great interviews with, and they have turned into these beautiful people who are living rich and full and amazing lives. And some of them I'm sure they're all still deeply, deeply traumatized by what they experienced, but he took away their opportunity to recover and get better and live a full life. And I'm sure some of these women would never have gotten better, and they would have died crack addicts. And that's also tragic, but it's also their right to die a crack addict if they want to. But also he took away their opportunity to get better and re-enter the world. So anyways, so that's my long rambling preamble to the actual story.
As we begin the story, pre-edit,
yes.
39 minutes in.
39 minutes in. So, Anthony Edward Sowell. Anthony Edward Sowell was born in 1959, and because I'm a narcissist, I make it all about me, and that's when my mom was born.
And my dad was born the year after that.
Okay. So he's the same age as our parents.
Basically, yeah.
He was raised in East Cleveland. He was one of 7 children. My mom was one of 7 children, and my dad was one of 7 children.
Well, my dad was of 10, and each of my dad's parents were of 10. Yeah.
What?
My dad had 20 sets of aunts and uncles, presumably.
That is psychotic.
And I have 10.
Wow.
Well, 9.
Okay. Now, so he was one of 7 kids. Another thing is that his aunt had died. His aunt had 7 kids.
It's aunt.
You're right. Oh my! That is hilarious because my ex Trevor always said aunt, and I would always correct him like Trevor, it's aunt.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to be funny.
No, but I would always do it to Trevor. I'm like, Trevor, is it a vase? Are you putting your flowers in a vase? Then it's not an aunt. And I completely just did that. I've said aunt my whole life. And okay. Anyways, so his aunt had died. And she had 7 kids as well. So all 7 of those kids moved into the same house. So 14 of them were living in this home. And he and his siblings were regularly beaten. They were whipped with electrical cords by his mother. His sister, Tressa, says that he was a mean and an aggressive child.
Where is he in this? Is he in the middle? Is he younger? Is he older?
I don't know.
Okay, it's fine.
I don't know where he falls amongst those 7 or those 14.
I don't know, because usually that's interesting. Like, I feel like in this case, it would probably be younger. So I feel like, very stereotypically, I feel like somebody like this in this situation would be, like, not the runt, but at least in the younger half.
Yes.
Definitely not the older.
I know that one of his nieces was younger than him.
Okay.
Because I know that when he was 11, starting at the age of 11, he started raping his younger niece. And did that over a 2-year period.
Well, maybe he was older then. It does fit the profile of being mean if you're the older one.
Yeah. He definitely wasn't the oldest.
Okay.
But anyways, so he ended up leaving when he turned 18 because he joined the Marines. And when he joined the Marines in 1978, he served until 1985. What's interesting about that is my mom and my dad were in the Marines at the same time.
Oh, okay.
What's more interesting about that is he was then assigned to duty with the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing at Cherry Point, North Carolina from 1978 to 1980. My mom and my dad were stationed in Cherry Point at that exact same time.
What?
And that's where I was born in 1980.
Do they know him?
So my dad's dead. Right. Thanks, Mitchell.
Sorry.
But I texted my mom, and I was like, do you know a guy? Do you remember a guy named Anthony Sowell?
I mean, the odds are really low.
She did not.
Okay, yeah.
She did not remember him.
It's probably like a 1% chance.
And I don't know how many active duty Marines are on the Cherry Point base.
Hundreds,
at
obviously.
Any given time, maybe thousands.
Right.
I don't know. But regardless, he was working with my mom and my dad.
Right.
At the exact same time
building
when I was born in 1980. What's even crazier is that he then was in Okinawa, Japan, stationed there from 1984 to 1985. We were also stationed in Okinawa, Japan. We were there from 82 to 86.
What?
So Anthony Sowell
was like, he was stalking you.
Anthony Sowell was fully stalking me as a kid.
Right.
But it is crazy to think that I lived on the same naval base, or my family worked in the same naval base as him, and I most likely lived in the same naval housing area as Anthony Sowell, both in North Carolina and again in Japan.
I mean, and what are the odds of the connection? Well, I guess pretty high because it's a naval thing. What are the odds that it's specifically North Carolina and Japan?
I know.
I mean, it could have been anywhere else in the country and then Japan.
There are I'm going to say 5 million Marine bases. I feel like that has to be accurate.
Maybe 6.
Maybe 6. So there's only a 1 in 5 to 6 million chance he could land at the one Marine base.
Okay.
And then to do it again, it's like it's literally impossible. It's mathematically impossible for it to happen. Yet it did. So that's pretty crazy. Now, Anthony Sowell left the Marines in 1985. He was honorably discharged. And I don't know.
Okay.
And he then got married and was then divorced and then had a daughter with a different woman. And that woman moved to Arkansas with their daughter. And then we have our first victim.
What year is this?
It is now 1989.
So this is included.
I'll stick with me.
Okay.
So it's 1989.
I was 1.
You were 1 year old, and I was 9 years old. And he meets Melvette Sockwell. And Melvette Sockwell was a sex worker who was 3 months pregnant. And he invited her into his home to drink and do crack. And when she came over, he raped her repeatedly at knife point. He choked her, he gagged her, he bound her, and he kept her in his home for days. Eventually, at one point, she managed to climb onto the roof and get the attention of the neighbors and had them call 911. When the police came, he was charged with kidnapping, rape, and attempted rape, and he got a plea deal, and he pled guilty to attempted rape and was sentenced to 15 years.
What?
So he was in jail from 1989 to 2005.
So he only got convicted of attempted
rape, even though she was raped, and kidnapped for days.
How do you not get a kidnapping charge? Because kidnapping would be compounded by all of that.
That's how plea deals work. You don't go to trial if you accept a lower thing, I guess. So, anyways, she says that there was no way, Melvette Sockwell says there was no way in hell that he would have let her leave that house alive. And she, today, now volunteers to help women get off the streets. So he's in prison from 1989 to 2005. And
so he served all of it.
He did. He served all of it.
Okay. Because usually in these situations, the people who are convicted get a 15-year sentence or out in 5 or something ridiculous like that.
On one of the documentaries, they interviewed a buddy of his from prison. And that buddy was saying, and this buddy was also a sex offender. And apparently there was I don't want to say a support group, but there was a group for sex offenders. And you guys could get together and work through this shit.
Right.
He refused to go to those.
Of course.
Because he didn't see himself as having a problem and didn't want to talk about it or deal with it at all. So he had said he was going to serve his 15 years his way. So he never got in trouble. He wasn't like somebody who was causing fights and making things worse, but he also wasn't doing the things that might have helped him get out early.
He just did a very standard across the board 15 years.
Exactly. And then he was released in 2005 with a diagnosis of being a low-risk category for sexual recidivism.
What does that mean?
That means it was their professional opinion that it was very unlikely that he would be a sex offender again. Okay,
so obviously that's fucked.
So at this point, he gets out of prison and he moves into his house at 12205 Imperial Avenue in Mount Pleasant.
And this is the
friend,
final destination.
Yes, and this is where our friend used to play in front of.
In 2005. I mean, he moved there in 2005.
He moved there in 2005.
Okay, that's fine, all right.
Yes. So at this point, he is a registered sex offender, and he's checking in regularly with law enforcement agencies, and they're stopping by to make home visits. His DNA was never entered into the system.
What?
And because he wasn't on parole or probation, when they would do inspections, they didn't actually have the right to enter his house.
But why don't they have his DNA for any? They don't have his DNA for any reason.
They just never
from
entered
the
it
court
into the
case,
system.
from ever.
It was never entered
ever.
Uh-uh.
I mean, they have fingerprints though, because when you book somebody,
yeah, that's not DNA. Though.
I know, but I mean, whatever.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because who knows what he was doing beforehand? Was Melvette really the first?
Well, my problem is that I'm stuck on this. My problem is that we have their fingerprints, but why don't we just collect DNA when people are booked?
Okay, I thought you just meant in general. I was like, oh.
No, not in general. Like if you've committed a crime,
yes,
your fingerprints are up. They're gone.
If you're a rapist, we need to keep track of that stuff.
Why can't we DNA you? Is that a thing? Is that not a thing?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm not like saying if shit happens, then you just lose all of your rights for the rest of your life. Yes. But I feel like if you've done something to get imprisoned for 15 years and it's sexual related, then we can take your DNA.
Yeah. Even if we think you're a low risk at acting out again.
Right.
We still should take your DNA.
Just put you in the book, and if nothing happens, then you're forgotten, which is fine.
Exactly. So during this time, initially he was like a really well-liked guy in the neighborhood and would offer free barbecue to the neighbors. And he ended up meeting and dating a woman named Lori Frazier. And Lori Frazier was a crack addict at the time. And she is the niece of our current mayor, Frank G. Jackson.
What?
Yep, she's his niece. And she lived in the house for 2 years. And she lived there from 2005 to 2007. And by the time that she had left, she said that near the end of the relationship, there was time where he would come home, or she would come home, and she would find him with fresh injuries on his face, and she would smell and blood in the home, and she would smell decay in the home. But he always had some kind of an explanation, like, oh, I was jumped by these dudes, and oh, that's my grandma's got some stuff upstairs that's going bad. Or there's always some kind of explanation for why this was going on.
Okay, so I'm not by any means ever going to blame her, but if I was hanging out with someone and just all of a sudden they've got somebody beat the fuck out of them, I'm going to need...
And it happened several times.
Right. The first time it's like, I'd be like, oh shit, like that's messed up, whatever. But, I mean, at least by point 2, I'm just saying from my personal perspective. Like if I came over here and we recorded a podcast and you had like a black eye, I'd be like, so what's going on? Yeah. and then if it happened again, I'd be like, something's not right.
And of course you would, but you're also not a crack addict. And there was one point in one of the documentaries where one of the women is talking about what life was like back when she was addicted to crack. And she said she would stand around in the kitchen and look at her dishes and realize her dishes needed to be washed, but didn't know how to wash them. Or there would be times where she was standing around surrounded by her dirty laundry, and it just didn't even occur to her that she was capable of doing something that would make her clothes clean.
Okay, not that I can understand, but I can accept that.
Yeah, crack completely warps your reality. It completely warps your reality and what you're able to accept or not accept. I know, Shanna. It's okay, sweetheart. She's getting scared.
What?
It's a scary story.
Oh my god.
So, anyways, she ended up moving out. During this time, he had been working at a factory.
So she moved out in 2007.
She moved out in 2007.
Okay.
Also around this time, during this whole time, he had been working in a factory, and he had been let go around 2007 as well. And he began collecting unemployment benefits and was selling scrap metal to make money. So as his crack addiction got worse, he lost his job, was selling scrap metal, and also different people in the neighborhood witnessed his just kind of general demise. There is an interview with this guy named Assad Taya. I'm sure I'm saying his last name incorrectly. He's a Middle Eastern man who owned the convenience store across the street called Imperial Beverage. And he was talking about how Anthony Sowell would come in all the time. He was this really nice and respectful and well-spoken guy. And he said something like, he just seemed like a very fancy man. He didn't say fancy, but he said something like he just seemed educated and smart and held himself really well. But then he said suddenly, about 2 years later, which would be around 2007, around the time she moves out and around the time he loses his job, something flipped with this guy. He said suddenly Anthony was quickly losing weight and had bags under his eyes and was twitchy and unkempt. And one time he witnessed him buying crack, and Anthony saw that he had witnessed it and obviously looked really embarrassed. And what's interesting is this guy, Assad Taya, this owner of Imperial Beverage, according to him, 85 to 90% of that neighborhood was on crack. Now,
What?
obviously that's hyperbole.
Okay, because I was like, you can't. Just by definition, you can't.
Yeah.
It can't be possible.
It can't be
Even
possible.
if it's like 50. 50 is like high.
Yeah, sure. But if it's somebody's experience that 85 to 90% of the people were on crack, then that probably meant a lot of fucking people out there were addicted to crack.
50. Like,
exactly.
Right.
And our friend who grew up in that area, I'm sorry, he didn't grow up there, but he
was there.
He played there a lot because he had a family member who lived there. He tells me that family member was a drug dealer, and that he thought it was interesting because his family member may have been selling drugs to Anthony Sowell and to these women who were raped and murdered.
I mean, it's totally plausible because we're talking a street, right?
Yeah. And Assad, the owner of Imperial Beverage, one day his brother was working in the shop, and 2 crack addicts came in, robbed the place, and murdered his brother.
Oh.
So his brother was murdered while working at the shop. And also there had been this horrible smell in the area because of all the rotting bodies, which we'll get into in a little bit.
What area? I mean, like, are we talking the block?
Yeah, so...
Or the house?
The house...
I mean, obviously the house, but like how far...
So our friend who played on that street as a kid said that everybody in the neighborhood just thought it smelled bad because it was that neighborhood.
Right. I mean, nothing. It could have been anything. Like it could have been like a shitty sewer line. Like it could have just been like the combination of multiple things. But so we're talking a large area.
Yes.
Okay.
And many people blamed it on the convenience store. Most people blamed it on this meatpacking plant that was directly next door to his house.
Oh, that's really easy.
Yeah,
that's really easy.
And we'll get into that later because it's kind of fucked up and sad what happened to the business owners. No, it's not. Although apparently there were rumors about that happening. But there's this really fucked up story that Assad tells us where there was one time one of his workers, whose name was Jeff, and it was not me.
Sure.
Comes into the shop and he's like, Assad, you have to come out back. Your garbage bin smells disgusting. And he goes out back and there's this heavy duty black garbage bag that's all duct taped up that he pulls out, and it's heavy and it reeks and smells worse than anything he's ever smelled in his life.
And what happened from there?
He put it back in the garbage can.
Oh my! So that's an undocumented victim.
Yeah, possibly.
Oh my God.
Or maybe not, because we don't have all of the pieces of all of the people we found.
No, but that's hindsight, as always in every true crime story.
Yes. So we're now on to our first verified murder. Crystal Dozier. Crystal Dozier is 38 years old. She's the mother of 7 children. She has a criminal record and a history of drug abuse. And she dies in May of 2007. She was reported missing in June of 2007. Her son Anthony says that she had been a drug addict his whole life. And also when he talks about her, he doesn't call her mom. He just calls her Crystal, which I think says a lot. But he also still loves this woman. But he also tells a story about how when he grew up, him and his siblings, the story he tells is he would carry around a jar of peanut butter in his backpack because there was nothing in the house. And he would feed him and one of his siblings, or maybe all of his siblings, but I think he just told me about one and told me. So he's having a private conversation with me.
Okay.
So I'm the one interviewing him.
Right, okay.
Mentioned that he would give him and this sibling a teaspoon of peanut butter for breakfast, a teaspoon for dinner, for lunch, and a teaspoon for dinner, and that's all they would eat. Not even
a tablespoon.
He said a teaspoon.
A tablespoon's bigger than a teaspoon. Right?
I understand. Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't know. I'm legitimately asking.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The teaspoon is the smaller one.
Right. Okay.
So Anthony, the son, did speak to his mother the day before Mother's Day because he specifically was like, my mother was not a mother, so I'm not going to call her on Mother's Day. But I will call her the day before and check in to see how she's doing. So he did. And then Mother's Day passes and he doesn't call her. And then a week or two later, she's missing. And he decides to file a missing persons report. He, his sister, and his aunt, all filed 3 separate missing persons reports. However, she had apparently gone missing before. And the police's general response was, well, she has a right to go missing.
What does that mean?
Exactly. What the fuck does
that mean? There's a line between, like, because there's a minimum amount of time, right? Like 24 hours or something.
Yeah.
You do have a right to just do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Yes.
But you don't have a right to not be. How long had it been at this point?
Weeks.
Yeah, you don't have the right. I mean, to me, even like a few days. I think it's 24 hours, but to me, it's like it's kind of a gray area of maybe I just want to fuck off for a few days.
The police are like, she's a crack addict. Crack addicts disappear, and they come back eventually, or they don't. But they're off somewhere doing crack somewhere. We're not going to waste our time trying to track down your crack addict mother.
Okay, just move on.
So they were claiming that the police didn't help at all, and they ended up posting their own flyers all over the neighborhood. So flyers for the missing Crystal Dozier were posted all over the place. And it reminds me of when we did Ariel Castro, how Mitchel is watching how everybody's looking for Amanda and Gina, but nobody's looking for Mitchel.
Right.
People were looking for Crystal. A lot of these other women are not going to be...
So it's like the opposite then. The first one is a huge deal. I mean, just...
It's not a huge deal.
Well, I mean, but basically...
There's at least flyers going up.
Basically, the first one, things are happening.
Yeah. Okay. Not a single one of these women was it a huge deal. Not a single one of these women made it onto the news that they were missing.
Right, because they're
the
not
police didn't
white.
take any of them. Exactly. But yeah, so Amanda Berry goes missing, and it's a whole media storm. But 11 black women in Mount Pleasant go missing, and nobody cares. Except for the people who actually knew them. So the next one is Tashana Culver. Tashana Culver is 31 years old when she died. She also had 7 children. And she died in June 2008.
So it was already a year. He waited a year.
He waited a year for this next one.
So so he waited a year, and we're going to say that the last 10 are within a year of each other. So it's not even that there are 11... There are 11 within 2 years. It's 10 within 1 year.
It's 10 within 16 months. So Tashana Culver was one of the ones who was not reported missing. Ever. Nobody reported her missing. Nobody noticed she was
So nobody
gone.
knew until it was identified then?
No, she wasn't reported missing until it broke on the news that this house was full of murdered women.
No, that's what I mean.
And then her family was like, oh, maybe that's where Tashana's been. Maybe she didn't just go off to do crack. Maybe she was murdered. So they reported her missing when the Anthony Sowell bodies were being recovered.
So for more or less, not until everything was discovered.
And on the documentary Unseen, there's this really moving portion of it where her ex-boyfriend, Carl Johnson, tells this story about how when they were dating, there was a period where she was sober and they were both very, very poor. And they had to walk like 45 minutes in the snow in the middle of the winter to get where they needed to go. And he had somehow gotten a hold of $120. I think just like a paycheck or something. He didn't say how he got $120. He got $120. And he told her to go out and buy herself a nice pair of boots because her boots were not good for walking in the snow. And he had also been walking around with plastic bags tied around his feet to keep his feet dry in the snow. And she ended up buying like a nice pair for both of them.
Oh.
And he's just crying while he's telling the audience, the viewers, how sweet and kind she was when she was sober. So that was Tashana Culver. Then there's Leshonda Long. And Leshonda was 25. She died in August of 2008. She was also not a missing person. And all they found of her was her head in a bucket.
What? I have like 40 questions.
Yeah.
Where was the bucket?
The bucket was in the basement. We'll get into when they discover all this stuff later. But yes, her head was in a bucket in the basement.
They never found the body.
No, which might be what was in the garbage bag. Her mother, Jewel, was addicted to drugs when Leshonda was born. And her grandmother was also addicted to drugs. So this was 3 generations of drug addicts. And her mother, Jewel, says that she herself, Jewel, had to do some really fucking crazy things as a drug addict to get her drugs. And she assumes that her daughter had to do the same. So essentially, his main modus operandi is like he's a dude who's in the area doing drugs. He's a known crack user. And he knows all the people in the area who are doing crack as well. And what he would do is he would invite women over with the offer of like, hey, I've got some 40s and I've got some crack. come on over and we'll like smoke up and get drunk and get high. And some of these women had been over to his place many times before.
So not only is there a pretense, but there's a layer of security.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's a dude they know.
It's not just It's not just a random. Well, A, it's not just straight up kidnap, and B, it's not also, oh hey, I met this dude and then he kidnapped and murdered me. But it's a double. It's like the worst situation.
Absolutely. And it ties back into what I was saying before. If you want to get away with murder, don't murder someone you know and travel far away. He wasn't doing either one of those things.
And he got away with, for at least for a while, he got away with 14.
He got away with 11 murders.
Oh, I thought there were 14.
There were 14 victims. 3 of them survived.
Oh, right.
There were 3 survivors
Yeah.
and 11 victims. And actually, I'm sorry, that's not counting the 1989 survivor. But from 2007 to 2009, there were 14 victims and 11 murders.
Right.
So yes, that's exactly what he did. And if one of them had been investigated, they probably would have figured it out.
Right.
But if 2 had been investigated...
100%.
100%!
Yeah. Okay, maybe not 100, but at least 90.
So at this point, the neighborhood fucking stinks.
Right, because we've got 2... Is this 3 or 2? Or I lost count.
Well, at this point, these bodies are all just in his home rotting.
I mean, how many are... Is this 2 or 3?
How many is this at this point? That's 3, right?
I feel like it's 3, yep.
So
he's now a serial killer, officially.
Yes, he's officially a serial killer. And those 2 bodies are in his home, and that head is in his home right now.
Right.
And this neighborhood fucking stinks. So what happens is health inspectors are now being called out to investigate this horrible smell. This is also around the time that Assad from Imperial Beverage tells a story about the duct tape. And Ray's Sausage, which is next door to his home, is a family-owned meatpacking factory. And they were the ones who were ultimately blamed by the health department for the smell. They had to spend tens of thousands of dollars repairing their ventilation system and their waste system. And even after they spent all of this money doing it, the smell was still there.
So, that's fucked up because not only is it not your problem, but you lose tens of thousands of or thousands of dollars or whatever. Did they get that back?
They have not yet, as far as I know. But I also read...
they also probably maybe needed it.
I don't think so.
I mean, maybe not that extreme, but maybe to a certain point. I don't know.
I mean, everybody can upgrade anything.
Well, right.
But if it's not necessary,
was it necessary? And they were like, "Oh, you definitely need to do this." And then once it happened, were they like,
"No, it's because they're being blamed on the smell." So they're like, "It has to be your ventilation. Okay. It has to be your waste."
So it wasn't like they were really sure it was it. They were just like, "Well, this has to be it."
Exactly. Okay. And they have since, I believe that they've tried to sue the city to get that money back because they were forced to do repairs that weren't needed to be done.
Right. Well, we're still within... I mean, when things happen in history, we're talking at least 10 years. We're not even 10 years out yet. So.
Yeah, exactly. So all while this is happening, he's also using a dating website.
Adam for Adam?
No. But he's on alt.com, A-L-T.
What?
And alt.com is a BDSM dating fetish and kink site where he says, if you're submissive, Y-O-U-R, if you're submissive and like to please, then this master wants to talk to you. So get your ass, Y-O-U''R-E.
What? Backwards? Really? Oh my God.
Get your ass over here, all caps, now.
Oh my God. I can't handle that grammar.
Yes. So I'm going to tell you about one more person, and then we're going to stop, and we'll pick up the rest of this story next week.
Is this going to be a 3-parter?
No, it's going to be a 2-parter.
Okay, all right.
Because we're at about the halfway point.
Okay.
So the next story is of Vanessa Gay. He met Vanessa Gay on a street corner and invited her over to do drugs. Once she got inside, he punched her hard in the face and said, "Bitch, take your clothes off." And then he raped her and beat her repeatedly for hours. At one point, she's just beaten and exhausted on the floor. And she asks if she can use the bathroom. And he says yes.
Wait, how do we know this? Did she survive?
She survives.
Okay, all right. Sorry, there was just too much detail on it.
That's fine.
Okay.
She's a survivor. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, obviously.
So Vanessa Gay survives. So she asks if she can use the bathroom, and he says yes. When she goes to use the bathroom, she's beaten and terrified, and as she's walking there, she sees a headless corpse laying in
What?
the other room.
So it's, what's her face then?
Yeah. So she sees the corpse lying there, and he is right with her, like escorting her to the bathroom. And she is pretending that she didn't notice it. She's trying to keep her shit together.
But like she's scared to death.
She's scared to death.
Okay. So she's not just like, oh, that's weird.
No, she's not like, oh, that's weird.
She's like,
I'm gonna fucking die.
Okay, all right, okay.
There's a dead body right there. Yeah. And if I panic, if I freak out, he's gonna know that I know, and he's gonna kill me, and I'm gonna end up like her.
Right.
So it's amazing to me that Vanessa Gay, high on crack, and having been beaten and raped for hours, was still smart enough and savvy enough to be so collected in this moment.
Right, that's insane enough to do 100% lucid and sober.
Exactly.
That's insane enough to be able to keep yourself composed in that situation, let alone anything.
Oh, totally.
Anything at
Vanessa
all.
Gay has something I don't have.
Yeah.
Because I can guarantee you, if I had seen that body, I would have flipped the fuck out.
Oh, yeah. Even lucid and sober completely, I would have just fucking run or tried, probably failed to run or something. Exactly.
So after this is done, she starts apologizing and says, I'm sorry I was so rough with you. And she's like, you know what? She's like, it's no big deal. It's a lot rougher than I was used to, but I had fun. This has been a good time. But just more than I'm accustomed to.
Oh, she's good.
Yeah, she's really fucking good. And she's like, I really need to go now. Can I please leave? And he's like, yeah, of course. So he's leading her down the stairs, and she's limping. She can barely walk. She's been raped and beaten so bad. But she also knows that if she lets him get behind her, she's going to die. So she grabs his arm and walks down the stairs with him arm in arm.
And keeps them equal.
Keeps them equal.
Yeah.
And when he opens up the door, she walks to the street, calm and cool. And as soon as she hits the sidewalk, she starts running.
Yes!
And she's running down the street, beaten and disheveled. It's a Sunday morning. People are getting ready for church. They're walking to church. They see her. People are laughing at her. She's asking for help. And there's this horrific moment where there's footage of her on the stand giving her testimony. And she's sobbing. And she's just saying, nobody helped me. I was screaming for help and nobody helped me.
Well, that's not necessarily in this case, but the thing that pops in my mind is the crowd. The thing when there are multiple people, nobody's going to help you.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not defending anybody that was near that, but if there are multiple people in a situation and you scream for help, even if they see something happening to you, they won't help you.
Yeah, exactly. So she calls the police. The officer she calls says that if she wants to report the rape, she has to come in person and do it herself at the station.
Oh my God.
And she's so exhausted. She's been beaten and raped for hours that she can't bring herself to go into the police station. And she just goes to sleep. And when she wakes up, she just can't process and deal with this anymore. So all she wants to do is just do more and more crack and sleep more and more and not think about it and not talk about it. So she didn't end up reporting it ever. And this woman just breaks my heart because watching interviews with her, she's so fucking powerful and so amazing. She talks about when she hit rock bottom. There was a moment where she was walking home and her husband and her kids were on their porch and they had all gathered and her whole family was there. And it was basically an intervention. And she was like, oh, fuck this. No. This is not going to happen. And she turns around and she starts walking away from it. And her daughter is following her down the street, begging her mom to come home, and stops in the middle of the road and is trying to physically block her from walking. And she's like, I chose crack over my own children.
Right. I mean, that's a common thing that happens.
Yeah. And what's crazy, she says she felt like she was betrayed by the police, that the police just saw her as just another drug addict. And after this, 8 more women were murdered.
Right. We're already at negligence and we haven't even begun.
We haven't even begun. Well, we have, because
Well,
3 murders
I mean,
is massive.
but
The loss
out
of
of-
these 3 lives.
right. But out of 11, we're
Out
not
of
even,
11?
we're not even halfway through the story. Is what I
We're
mean.
not exactly. It's just fucking starting. So that's about halfway through my notes. So I think that this is a good time for us to wrap up this part of the story.
Sure.
And next week we will do part 2.
We're gonna make it through all 8 and aftermath.
We will. Because we spent so much time with the lead up.
That's true. We spent roughly 40 minutes on an earthquake.
Yes. But also the context of the story and talking about race and the neighborhood and things like that.
It's a lot of background that's necessary.
I knew that was going to take up a lot of the time, and that was a big chunk of my notes for this.
Okay.
So we are literally halfway through my notes. So I think that this is a good place for us to stop.
Yeah, that's
Now,
good.
I know that next week will be the second half of the Anthony Sowell murders, but I know that you already have a plan for episode 5.
I do.
And I don't know what it is.
Oh, I'm so excited.
But tell me. I want to hear.
You want me to tell you now?
Tell me now.
To find out? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not extremely, like, it's not directly related to the Strangler, but so the dude that I picked is also a serial killer, and his name is Michael Madison. And the reason I asked you to, like, kind of clarify was that he was obsessed and worshipped Anthony Sowell.
What?
So he used to, like, watch videos of, like, his testimony and stuff and, like, cry, and he felt sorry for him, and he was basically not mimicking him, but basically he was an inspiration.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh.
And 100% coincidental. Like, I ran across his name in an article of, like, basically fucked up Cleveland stories.
Yeah.
And he was, like, the first one. And when I was reading into just the basics of his details, it was like, oh yeah, and he had an obsession with Anthony Sowell. And I didn't know Anthony Sowell's name at the time, and I searched Anthony Sowell.
And it's actually Sowell.
Oh, Sowell? So I searched Anthony Sowell, and it came up and it was like, also known as Cleveland Strangler, and I was like, oh my god! So that's where we'll be in 2 episodes.
Okay.
I mean, so it doesn't really have anything
Michael Madison?
Yes.
Okay.
Michael Madison.
Michael Madison.
So I didn't really, like, directly have anything to do with the Strangler, but it was, 100% related.
Fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's time to lighten the mood a little bit.
A little bit.
We need a little bit of a palate cleanser.
Your palate's not going to get cleansed by the next section that's coming up.
Are these some dark recommendations?
Yeah, so what I have to recommend is actually a combination of...
Man, it is raining so hard outside. I wonder if they can hear that on the microphone.
I don't know, it might get taken out by the fan. It's fine. But what I have to recommend is both a story and probably digestibly a movie or documentary, I guess you could say, called Mommy, Dead, and Dearest. So
Seen it. Very good.
Probably some of you. Have you seen it?
I have.
I asked you if you had seen it before, when we were talking about this, and you were like, I've seen...
I said I've seen Mommy Dearest, and I've seen Die Mommy Die.
Right.
But then when you explained it, I said, oh yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, I didn't know you... I thought you just, like, meant you'd heard of it.
Oh, no, I've seen the movie. It's good.
Okay, yeah. So basically, the first time I was ever really exposed to Munchausen by proxy, so more or less...
It was also my introduction to Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah, I think I knew what it was, but I'd never really heard a whole story based around it.
And it's kind of like the best is a tough word, but you know what I mean.
The best example.
Yes.
So I'm going to do some spoilers, so you should probably skip ahead like 30 seconds. So more or less, it's a mother who has a child named Gypsy Rose, and for whatever reason, she creates all these illnesses that Gypsy Rose has that she doesn't. And Gypsy Rose knows this, but just kind of goes along with it and always collects like donations. And stereotypically, Munchausen by proxy, the mother needs that to feel better about herself or to survive or something.
I also think it's worth noting that although the daughter knows it, she has spent her entire childhood doing this. So, and also, she may know it, but that's her reality.
No, I mean, she knows it, but she doesn't do anything about it or feel like she can do anything about it.
And she also doesn't realize that her mom is actually doing things to her that is making her sick as well.
Well, she does.
Okay.
Eventually.
Yes, eventually.
That's why I kind of phrase it that way. So she does figure it out. Long story short, she has like a boyfriend she meets online, or it's like a neighbor or something. I don't know.
She meets him online.
But she confesses to him that she knows that she's not sick at all, like by any means. And her and her boyfriend end up murdering their mother. And currently, Gypsy Rose is in prison and serving probably a really long sentence. It's not life. I know it's not life because it's kind of like,
Yeah, it's kind of like,
you murdered your mother,
but
she kind of tortured you for 21 years.
Yeah, and self-defense can't really be premeditated, but still,
right. It's extremely gray. But what it boils down to is murder, more or less. This is just totally my opinion, off the record, on the recorded record, but it's fine that she murdered her.
So are you recommending this movie, or are you recommending murdering mothers who are guilty of Munchausen by proxy?
Both.
Okay.
Especially if it's that long. But definitely the movie. Mommy, Dead, and Dearest.
Mommy, Dead, and Dearest. Great. My recommendation is a very nerdy one, but that's how I roll. So every year, 60,000 Dungeons & Dragons nerds and folks like that gather together and go to Gen Con.
There are 60,000 people there?
60,000 people come out to Gen Con every year.
Okay, so we went to see Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson, and that was 15.
Yes.
And that was a shitload of people.
Quadruple that and have them all playing Dungeons & Dragons.
I can't even imagine 15,000 people playing Dungeons & Dragons. Anyway.
Yes. So Gen Con is going to be, when this episode comes out, the following weekend in Indianapolis. If you can't make it this year and you're a gaming geek, you should come out another year. And it's not just Dungeons & Dragons. People go there for board games. Even some people go there for video game stuff, but not really. That's kind of more like Origins.
That's me.
Yeah. Origins is more your style, which is in Columbus. And I'm totally fucking taking you to Origins next year.
Okay.
We are going. Because I've got my role-playing game stuff there, but you will also have fun with your video game stuff there. But Gen Con is incredible. I'm going to be there. And my favorite game, which I mentioned before, is Dungeon Crawl Classics. And I will be running the official Goodman Games Dungeon Crawl Classics tournament. I am one of several judges who will be running the tournament, and I'm very excited about that. I will also be working at the Goodman Games booth, so you can also feel free to stop by and say hi. The Goodman Games booth will also have an entire section of Appendix N books. And I mentioned last week that I have a podcast about the Appendix N called the Appendix N Book Club. So if you want to come over and geek out about the Appendix N or Dungeon Crawl Classics with me, stop by the Goodman Games booth and say hi. I would love to meet you and chat with you. And it's a really fun convention. I highly recommend checking it out. That's my recommendation.
Thanks.
So I guess that's it. We still don't know how to end this.
No. I just thought of we could at least do a ripoff of My Favorite Murder and just make it particular to whatever the topic was. So, I mean, in this sense, we would just say, don't get strangled.
Oh, no. I don't like that.
I mean, don't get murdered. It's just as bad.
Yeah. I mean, definitely crack is whack.
Yeah, but that's worse than don't get strangled.
Well, no, because you don't really have a say in whether you're strangled.
You don't have a say in whether you get murdered or not either.
That's that's true. But definitely crack is whack, guys. Stay off the crack. I know. It's part of systemic racism, so I'm not going to blame anybody who is on crack.
Oh, no.
But if you're just a teenager who's listening,
you're I think I want to do crack.
Crack might be interesting. Don't.
I'll even advocate just smoke instead. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. Grab a pack of cigarettes, get a 40-ounce of beer. Maybe you want to experiment with hallucinogens.
Oh, yeah. I would even say shrooms over cigarettes.
Oh, sure. Totally. You're not going to get addicted to
Don't quote me on that. You can't use that for any, you can't use that in a court case or anything.
Well, but I will say I've done shrooms and they were fine. But quitting smoking was the hardest fucking thing I ever did in my entire life. And Mitchell currently smokes.
Supposedly it's as bad as heroin or crack. So should I start heroin and we'll find out? Or
I think you should start heroin and crack, and we'll have a
A
competition.
three-way. Okay.
All three.
Sure.
And we'll see which one you can quit first.
That's what we'll do next episode.
Well, no. Next episode, I'm going to finish up.
Okay, well, in 2 episodes, that's going to be the theme.
Okay, it'll just be, we'll be watching you, listening to you go through crack,
all 3
nicotine,
withdrawals.
and heroin withdrawals.
So I'll start doing it now, and then by the time we record the next episode,
I will say, it has been, my last cigarette was on July 23rd, 2009. We're recording this on July 26th, 2018.
Yeah.
So it's been 9 years and 3 days since I've had a drag of a cigarette. But when I did quit smoking, I swear to fucking God, I thought about cigarettes every single day for more than a year.
Oh, yeah.
It was more than a year before an entire day went by where one day I was like, wait, I don't think I thought about cigarettes at all day yesterday.
Right.
It took me more than a year to get to that point. So it's fucking hard.
Right.
It's a hard thing to do. Crack is whack.
You're whack.
Once you go crack, you never go back. Wait, no, that's not true. You can go back.
Before we go, follow us on Instagram.
Yes, we have a Facebook group. Yeah. Join our Facebook group and chat with us. Group. We talk to people on Facebook.
What's the Twitter thing? Do you follow on Twitter?
Yes, you follow on Twitter. We are at Cleveland Pod.
And obviously, if you're hearing this, you don't need to know. But just in case you do want to know, we're on SoundCloud, and we're on Stitcher, and we're on Google Podcasts, and we're on iTunes.
Yes.
And we're trying to get on Spotify.
And tell your friends about this show.
Yeah.
Like, if you have friends who you think are interested in fucked up Cleveland stories.
Yeah, be like, there are these 2 dudes that talk about really fucked up shit in Cleveland. They have no clue what they're talking about.
They don't even look up anything at all. They just make up the facts. It's amazing.
They just talk about whatever they want to talk about for like an hour and a half.
Yes.
And you should listen to it.
You should listen to it because it's stupid.
Yeah. I think that should be something on our signature line. Something about thanks for listening for an hour and a half about shit that you know more than I do, probably.
Thanks for wasting your time.
Yes. That's really good. Thank you for wasting your time. Good night.
Good night.